Peter the Great, the most revolutionary ruler and reformer of all time. Peter the Great was known as one of the most famous reformers of all time, but was it a good idea to change ancient tradition for an ancient country? A feature of Peter's reforms is their total inconsistency because of how big Russia was during that time. Through the 1700s to the 1715s, reforms were barely carried out because they were dedicated by the needs of war. 1715 through 1725, however, the most effective reforms were made, and to this day they are still there. When his dad died, his older brother Alexeyevich took the throne, but then he died in 1682, leaving the question of who will be the next Tsar. The boy Doom decided to crown the healthy and intelligent Tsar Peter. The reason why Peter wanted to reform Russia was because he saw of how it lacked social and economical development. Peter also saw Europe, and he saw of how backwards Russia was. He saw that it needed major foreign policies, and he tried to overcome the isolation of Russia using relationships with Europe. Peter decided to reform politics because he saw of how weird the politics were in Russia compared to the other European countries. He tried to base it off most of the European standards, such as creating the government Senate in 1711, which was the highest legislative and judicial body that ruled the country in the absence of Peter. He also made the Collegians, which is the highest executive body where all decisions were made collectively. There was also a political investigation, where it fixed the Secret Service. Speer wanted to go based off the political system of the time. He made the Senate, which governed the laws and the court. Then he made the prosecutors general's officers, which we already discussed as the highest executive and judicial branch, which he gave his friend Ivanovich the biggest role in it. Then he himself can overrule if needed. The Senate made collegians, which were pretty much smaller versions of governments which were used for different topics such as trading, industry, management, armies, and controlling and spending for taxes. Peter the Great was convinced that Russia was a backwards power because of the economical system that it had. He told people to produce the necessary goods themselves, and he started a revolution in industry and commerce. He also developed new types of fields to increase production. He also did different types of tax reforms, and he introduced the yard tax, which was a fixed amount that is collected from every man. Foreign duties reached 75% in the trading industry, and owners manufacturers received special privileges. Manufacturers could only buy and exchange with peasants, however. The reforms were not fully fair, though. The number of children was not taken into account for these taxes, and no matter what the man did for a job. Age was also not taken into account, so 5-year-olds had to pay taxes. Manufacturers were also subordinate, mainly for the benefit of the war, which many people did not support. The introduction of a monopoly on a number of goods was also produced because of these tax reforms. Another big thing when it comes to the economic reforms that Peter did was that he made many factories that stand to this day because of how well they were made. In the social reforms, there were educational, medical, and cultural reforms. These reforms included the education for people of industry, specialized schools for engineering, mining, artillery, and medical schools, brought teachers from Europe. There's a new typograph and a new font. For medical reforms, there were hospitals for soldiers, creation of a state hospital, and the creation of state support. In cultural reforms, there was a new chronological calendar, the creation of the state theater, and the organizations of assemblies. With this, there was also the restrictions of beards, wearing European clothes, and the allowance of smoking. Including with the social reforms were nobility studying abroad, opening of schools and colleges, including maritime, engineering, and artillery. In the science reforms, there were civic fronts, printing houses, newspapers, a public library, cabinet of curiosities, and academy of sciences, both specializing in strange deformed things. Art was also introduced with painting and architecture. There was also theaters around this time. There was also new life, as we said before, with a new time reckoning, European clothes, the assembly, and a new type of etique. Peter also did religious reforms. In the 1700s, Patrick Hadrian died. In the middle of the year, Stephen Yapsi was appointed by Peter to the partial throne. In 1701, the creation of the monastery order was made. In 1702, Peter allowed foreigners to build their temples, so Catholic was now a thing in Russia. Prohibition for Muslim priests to own Orthodox serfs. Then in 1721, a publication of the spiritual religious was building. Why did Peter do all of these reforms? Peter did lots of these reforms because of the hostile and financial resources that he needed. The church occupied a significant part of the land that did not pay taxes. Peter wanted absolute power, which meant lowering the authority of the church. Many church leaders were against the reforms that he did, and the church did not pay taxes to the treasury, meaning that it could sell goods at a reduced price. The plus side of these reforms was that the army increased due to the fact that people of the church had to do duty. The fight against the begging began, which also helped the centralized of the state. Peter took steps to reduce the number of the clergy, and the calendar was converse. Now the year's day was being moved to January 1st. A new alphabet came out of the printing house. The vocabulary was enriched. On the other hand, there was a tighter church attendance rule. People were obligated, all non-Christians, to accept Orthodox. The clergyman is obliged to report each person to confess to a special department, and there was even more taxation. Peter started doing military reforms because the Azov campaign and the siege of Nirvana showed that the army was in deep crisis. Peter started doing regular recruitment, meaning that every 20 families, one young man had to serve in the army for life. The recruits were seen off and understood that he probably would not return. There was a disbandment of the archery army of Ivan V. The Navy was founded with a total of up to 30,000 people and regular army of about 300,000 people. Military manufacturing happened. An internal network of military factories were being created. The army was built with weapons and equipment. Infantry, artillery, naval, engineering, and medical military schools were opened. 1695 through 1705 were many different types of military reforms that Peter did. This included large-scale reforms of his army, the development of a Baltic fleet, and the introduction to recruitment for the infantry and cavalry command. 1716 through 1720 were different types of regulations, such as military regulations and sea regulations, including the adoption of uniform standards. 1700s through 1722 were different types of ranking systems that were made within for the officers and for army people. What are the results, you may ask? New states approached, Russia received a wide international recognition, development in domestic areas, improvement conditions, widespread European culture supported for the church state. Different types of churches also appeared. Competition for nobility and titles were different. There was a building of a fleet, the army, and the changing of armies, strength in the monarchy, constructions, insignificant loss of life of people, numerous taxes that don't have any maintenance, the use of free labor of serfs, and high taxes on almost everybody of the population. Practically everybody did not concern of the common people, oppressed anything that had anything to do with national traditions, popular uprisings, and momentarily interests, and additional responsibilities for all segments of the population, and a minimum of 25 years of military service. My thoughts about reforms is that it's very easy to make reforms and win wars when there are enough taxpayers and people dying for the interest of the state.